Hello, listeners. Welcome to the Whetstone Audio Dispatch, a series of episodes about food as a lens to view and understand the world. I'm Varma, an anthropologist and writer, and you may recognize me as the host of Bad Table Manners. I'm back to bring you a two-part series from Srinagar, Kashmir. From exploring how life revolves around local bakeries to the innovative, sustainable farming methods that thrive in the state, I bring you stories of resilience, community, and ultimately, hope. So join me as I embark on an investigation into a place that is simultaneously called the most militarized place on earth and heaven as we know it. My team and I leave our guest house for the floating market that takes place in the heart of Srinagar's famous Dal Lake. We arrive at the dock, as agreed, at 4:45 a.m. In pitch darkness, we climb into his shikara. Yes, I almost fall in. And watch the divine switch of light as he rows on. About 40 minutes later, we're in a floating marketplace, forming slowly and organically in front of us. Boatmen row past, their canoes full of vegetables, and gather in front of the sign that says Vegetable Floating Market. One canoe is laden with eggplant or brinjal, the other with beans, another with cucumber, bright as a field. We also see piles of green chilies, kohlrabi, and spinach. The air is sweet and clear. I watch one boat go by, which is loaded with the biggest organic pumpkins I have ever seen. The abundance is palpable. A small crew of bleary-eyed tourists wait at the edges, watching the commerce unfold. Some barter, others pass currency. There's hustle and bustle, and clearly a system that ensures that everyone will not sell the same thing. For veggies grown on the lake, this is the first point of sale where prices are the cheapest. In one of the most important and unusual floating markets in the world, we watch this ritual of crack of dawn commerce play out. We'll return to the floating gardens soon, but first, let me tell you a little bit more about where we are. This is Kashmir, a land which kings, colonizers, poets, and artists have referred to as Jannat, the Urdu word for heaven. It's not hard to see why. Everywhere I look, there is beauty. A lake flooded with pink lotuses. A tree heavy with an abundance of ripe, juicy fruit. A fragrance in the air that changes frequently, but usually involves something floral, something smoky. A sunflower 3 times taller than a human. But for every flower and every fruit is an armed soldier on the ground. Many people in Kashmir trace the history of colonization back more than 450 years, to when the region was first incorporated into the Mughal Empire in 1586. After India and Pakistan became independent nation-states in 1948, the former princely state was divided into India and Pakistan-controlled territories, with both countries claiming the entire state as theirs. A small part of the region is also claimed by China, trickily situating Kashmir at the crossroads of 3 nuclear powers.
At least 60,000 dead over nearly 7 decades, 3 wars between 2 nuclear-armed states, and countless human rights violations. This is the story of Kashmir.
Since 1989, the Himalayan region of Kashmir has witnessed an armed rebellion for azadi or freedom from Indian rule. Popular demands for freedom have been countered by a forceful military response by India, including extrajudicial killings, enforced disappearances, and elaborate counterinsurgency tactics. All the while, the Indian government sees the conflict as a form of cross-border terrorism that is funded and abetted by Pakistan. I'm here in August, a month that is usually politically tense. August 5th marks the anniversary of a day most Kashmiris would prefer to erase from their minds. In 2019, the BJP government revoked Jammu and Kashmir's statehood and autonomy when it removed Article 370 of the Indian Constitution. The decision was accompanied by more than a 7-month total communication blackout, the longest committed by any democracy in history. But for many Kashmiris, lockdowns, curfews, and blackouts have become part of daily life for the last 30 years. And yet Kashmir is promoted as a major tourist destination for Indian tourists. Of the tourists who visit Kashmir annually, a shikara ride on the Dal Lake or a stay on one of the 900 wooden houseboats that are docked on the lake are essential. The lake's beauty is enhanced by mountains on 3 sides, and even in summer, snow is still visible on the peaks. An ancient temple, Shankaracharya, and a Mughal-era fort are visible on the tops of the mountains from the water. On the edge of this lake are spread villages, orchards, and the famous Mughal gardens. Dal Lake has been the center of Kashmiri civilization for thousands of years. There's little that can match the feeling of being rowed on the lake when the evening azan or call to prayer from mosques all over the city fold you in with their melody. The Dal is a key hero of the Kashmir as heaven on earth narrative, thanks to its famous wooden houseboats. For those of you who haven't seen one, imagine a small floating palace with multiple bedrooms, bathrooms, and a kitchen en suite. George Harrison of the Beatles famously lived on one while learning the sitar from Ravi Shankar. For many Indian tourists, the promise of a houseboat honeymoon makes someone almost worth marrying. Like so many aspects of life in Kashmir, Dal Lake and more generally environmental concerns have taken a backseat to national security and military priorities. Despite the fact that millions of dollars have been poured into Dal Lake conservation efforts in the years since the armed conflict began, the lake's delicate ecosystem has been severely damaged by unregulated development. Untreated sewage from the city flows directly into the lake in the millions of tons every year. More than 50% of water bodies in and around Srinagar have disappeared over the last half-century. Experts blame massive urbanization, which has led to pollution, siltation due to deforestation, and overexploitation of many streams and lakes.
नो प्रॉब्लम आप देखिए मुझे नहीं पता ओके
हम इंट्रोडक्शंस के साथ शुरू करें
ठीक है ओके मेरा नाम तारिक अहमद पटलू है मैं एक हाउस बोट ऑनर हूँ हमारा बिज़नेस है हमारे हाउस बोट्स हैं मेरी पैदाइश यहीं पे तो यहीं पे बड़ा हुआ हूँ पढ़ाई भी थोड़ी बहुत की है ज़्यादा नहीं की है तो उसके बाद में फिर अपने काम से मेरे फादर की डेथ हुई थी 1985 के तो उसके बाद में मुझे ये सारा कुछ संभालना पड़ा एंड उसके बाद में हमारा जो 19
Tariq, a houseboat owner and my first guest on the episode, takes us back to the beginning of the armed conflict in 1989 when everything changed. As political strife entered Kashmir, environmental degradation began. Tariq tells me about the travelers all over the world that he hosted on his houseboat called Hollywood, a gondola-cum residence filled with locally carved walls, decorative screens, and bright furnishings. He recalls with great fondness a German family who would stay for weeks. an Englishman who he became lifelong buddies with. Today, he no longer gets to play host to international tourists. That was a different Kashmir, he tells us. वो एक अलग कश्मीर था.
वो एक अलग कश्मीर था. हमारे यहाँ पे मैं ऐसे आपको एक्सप्लेन कर सकता हूँ कि हर एक हाउस बोट जो आज की डेट में 5 स्टार में जो फैसिलिटीज़ हुआ करती थी आज वो हम देते थे 1989 में. हमारे वेटर को भी पूरी यूनिफॉर्म ये सब हर एक.
The Dal is home to more than 40,000 people, including people like Tariq, who belong to a historically discriminated and marginalized Hanji community whose name means water dwellers. Some of our guests interviewed even refuse to say the name of this community of water dwellers because they feel the name itself is stigmatizing. But Tariq, a proud Hanji, has no such reservations.
Whosoever is living in the water bodies, उसको हांजी बोलते हैं. ये पता नहीं कब से स्टार्ट हुआ है क्या है. हमें सेकंड क्लास सिटीजन के तौर पर देखा जाता है यहाँ पे कश्मीर के अंदर. अगर मैं किसी भी ऑफिसर में.
Not so long ago, the water of Dal Lake was crystal clear. Subina, a 20-year-old woman who belongs to the Shia community and who grew up on the lake, tells me a beautiful anecdote that is a testament to its purity.
पश्मीना शॉल्स यूज़ करते हैं. जब इनको पहली बार धोना था, जब ये बनाते थे, फिर जब पहला इनको ये करना होता था, धोया जाता था, तो पहली बार इनको डल के पानी से धोया जाता था, बिकॉज इट वॉज प्योर नेचुरल. लेकिन अगर हम आज देखते हैं.
But for Sabina and the rest of the community that lives around the Dal Lake, such days are a distant memory. She comments on the level of pollution and toxicity in the water.
I don't remember मैंने last time dip कब किया है अपना hand इस पानी में, because I'm Dal dweller. No, seriously, मुझे याद ही नहीं है कब किया है.
A lot has happened to create the situation that we're in. A situation where those who live on the lake cannot even dip a finger into its water. As the environmental conditions of the lake have deteriorated, blame has squarely fallen on the lake-dwelling community. To understand how the government and lake dwellers have become locked on opposite sides of the issue, I make an appointment with the government representative of the Lake Conservation and Management Authority, Asma Puchpandit. Asma provided another angle. According to her, plenty of work is being done on the Dal, and the government has taken several important steps to clean up the lake.
I actually do not agree with the statement that less has been done over this. That to prove my point is that you should look into the other lakes of the city as well. Nobody looks into them, and you can see the condition of those lakes as well. Although those lakes are also connected to the Dal, but nobody looks after them. There is no project by the government, etc., any department, and you can just see the fate of Anjar Lake, Gilsar Lake, Khushalsar Lake, which are also very much in the heart of Srinagar city. They're not in a remote area or nobody knows about them. It's not like that. The Dal Lake being on the boulevard has got maximum of its attention, and the authority was also framed, which was earlier called Lakes and Waterways Development Authority. Now it has been renamed as Lake Conservation and Management Authority. So it looks after the Dal Lake, all its perspectives, whatever is to be done. The engineering side, the scientific side, the road side, whatever is done, that is taken care of by the authority itself.
I quickly understand that, quote, saving the Dal is an intensely politicized movement. And this politics seeps into every lotus, lily pad, and vegetable that grows in the Dal's waters. Dal dwellers and government officials express deep concern about the lake's future. And yet they have very different imaginations for how the lake's degradation has happened and what is required to repair the situation. One place where this conflict between the government and lake dwellers is playing out is around the floating vegetable gardens that members of the lake community have cultivated for centuries. This is where we began this episode. The practice of farming is unique to the Dal, which, as locals love to say, is fertile by nature. While lake dwellers defend the organic gardens as necessary for the overall health of the lake, government officials see these practices as contributing to the Dal Lake's overall decline. Floating gardens are made from mud and thatched weeds from the lake. these mobile gardens are narrow patches of land that can be rowed away or moved as necessary. They are entirely organic. One lake dweller describes how he manages his floating garden. It involves lining up the soil at the bottom with weeded lily pads. He then flips them over to create a fertile base made from the richest nutrients of the lake.
मजबूत है ये जेड और मिट्टी होता है ये पहले नीचे होता है इसको उठाना पड़ता है ये लोहे का टुकड़ा होता है इसका जो औसत है वो अलग होता है ये पूरा होता है जैसे वो देखे वो घास है वो साइड इसको हम बनाते हैं फ्लोटिंग गार्डन इसको भी हम बनाते हैं इसको पूरा उठाते हैं इसको हम लाइनिंग से काटते हैं जैसे इसको लाइनिंग में काटते हैं ना इसको ऐसे भी काटते हैं फिर इसको अलग अलग करते हैं इसको ये ऊपर आता है ये मिट्टी और जड़ आता है क्योंकि ये ऊपर ही रहता है
After we catch a glimpse of an eggplant that seems to be magically growing on the lake, we begin to understand this unique system of cultivation. Floating gardens are akin to movable private property. This practice is thousands of years old and unique to the Dal. Hi listeners, I want to tell you about Heirloom Cities, an amazing book and cultural project founded by Sri Bodanapu. A city-based gastronomic exploration of Indian cities, these books present local food, recipes, traditions, and rituals as common heirlooms that are best enjoyed when they are shared with the world. The first of the series will travel to the artistic city of Kolkata and the bustling business metropolis by the sea, Mumbai. Look out for the very first book, the Mumbai edition, in the spring of 2025 and follow the account on Instagram at Heirloom Cities for more information. Produce from the floating gardens is sold every morning at a vegetable market and then distributed to the rest of the city. But like the lake itself, the floating gardens are dying. To understand the story in its entirety, I go to the floating vegetable market in the interiors of the Dal. It takes us some time, but we finally find Mubina, a lake dweller, farmer and mother with a gentle voice and demeanor. We hop off our boats, step across her damp garden, and find her in her cozy lakeside kitchen, getting her kids ready for school. We ask Mubina how long she has worked in these gardens and how much time she spends cultivating each day. Mubina says she's worked on these gardens her whole life. Each day she spends about 4 hours cultivating her produce, sometimes more. 4 hours in the morning during the day when I have time, and sometimes all day. It depends on the housework I have. This season she's growing a lot of stuff, she says. Beans, cucumber, tomatoes, collard greens, saag, lots of different vegetables. In winter she grows turnip, carrot and hak. I ask her how the vegetables she's growing are different from regular vegetables. She says there's no comparison. The vegetables from the Dal are very pure, she says. Very nutritious and healthy compared to what we grow on the ground. For the vegetables that grow on the land, we use a lot of fertilizers, but not on the Dal vegetables. We don't use fertilizers. We use the grass that grows in the lake as the fertilizer. She says the high nutritional value of the vegetables is evident from the fact that they are all very healthy. We don't get sick, she says. I asked Mubina how she learned to farm on water. She says, I learned to do this from my mother. We're 3 generations who have been doing this work. My grandmother, my mother, and me.
हाँ ये मैं सिमन प्रसान के तो हिंद पाते कुछ संभाल जान छुना तू इवेंगन ज़मीना सिद्ध करान छो वना तो ऐशो
The cross-generational talk is timely because just then her son pops in. A sharp, well-dressed guy who looks to be in his late teens or early 20s.
We are totally against them. Otherwise, there is nothing in that.
I sense immediately that there's a distance between his mother's work and his life.
That they have that.
When we ask him whether he will work on the floating gardens in the future, the room fills with laughter. Once the uproar quiets down, he says there's no point working on the gardens anymore. He sees it as a waste of time and labor. As is happening all over the world, the younger generation of Dal dwellers are leaving agriculture for more lucrative opportunities in the city. It is primarily women of older generations who work on the Dal. This means that the responsibility of maintaining these gardens, the physical effort and emotional care that Mubina calls khyal, is up to women like her.
वब्दावान इच्छा आत्मन से ज़्यादा ज़नान involve आसान या मर्द या दोनों
ज़नान असल ज़्यादा
For the care and this purpose
मोहनी छ आसान सुबह शामन गारे दुहस छ आसान पर लेडीज ती यमै छ प संभालान सोरे.
According to Mubina, the khyal or care that women like her put into the floating gardens is not only for the sustenance of her own family and because she loves the work, but this labor is also necessary to keep the lake itself healthy. Mubina describes her work as akin to being a gardener. Like a gardener weeds and prunes a garden, Mubina and the communities who work on the lake help care for its well-being by using weeds and a mud fertilizer to enrich the lake's marine life. Mubina and many other lake dwellers we speak to said that part of the lake's degradation can be directly explained by the fact that the Lake Conservation and Management Authority, or LCMA, has displaced hundreds of lake dwellers from the lake in the name of environmental protection. But according to Mubina, the effect has been the opposite. Mubina remembers a time when there were 500 water dwellers in the area. Dalzmali, she calls them, which literally means the gardeners of the Dal. Today, there's only a fraction of that number. But let's remember Asma, the government representative we spoke to earlier. According to her, the government did employ lake dwellers to remove the weeds, but they were unsuccessful.
What initially authority did, because the dwellers, the lake dwellers, the hanjis, which we call commonly, are skilled laborers. Yeah. They know how to do it. They were asked to do a massive operation was laid for the deweeding operations manually. But they were not able to. It incurred a lot of expenditure, and the roots, mainly the rhizome, what we call it scientifically, were not completely removed from the bottom of the lake. What happened was that
for Asma, the lake dwellers we just heard from who speak of decline and forced displacement are, according to her, a well-off community that was never displaced. For her, the expectation of a Dal miracle is very frustrating.
We have personally observed among the Hanjis, maximum Hanji population is very well-to-do. They are quite educated and they are economically good. Definitely there are some people who are not doing that well, but others are quite well. They have their houseboats. They own a houseboat which is worth crores. Unfortunately, everyone here in Kashmir thinks that it's solely the duty of the government to look into these things, which is not the right approach. Like everybody will litter it and government.
It is impossible to square Asma's perspectives with the experience of lake dwellers themselves, which reveals a huge lack of trust between the community and the government. As we rowed back to the shore that evening, after a fulfilling day with the water dwellers, I find myself with mixed feelings. I think about the freshness of the vegetables, the dreaminess of the gardens, and the beauty of Mubina's work. Nasser, a Dal dweller who works for an organization that serves the Dal Shia community, tells us about how government programs have labeled lake dwellers as encroachers. In reality, he says, the Dal dwellers have revenue, land, and tax documents that establish their rightful belonging.
Real history of Dal Lake. Firstly, उनके जहन में ये मेन होता था कि जो डल के रहने वाले हैं डल dwellers, they are the encroachers. They have come here from.
To deal with the so-called encroachment starting in 1979, thousands of Dal dwellers were removed from their homes and were, quote, rehabilitated elsewhere. As he points out, though, removing lake dwellers has not improved the lake's ecology.
कि उसके बाद जब rehabilitation का process हुआ डल लेक notified हुआ construction वगैरह के लिए तो यहाँ से फिर rehabilitate किए गए. I think 40% of people have been rehabilitated to different areas from Dal Lake.
वो कब शुरू हुआ था वो rehabilitation?
I think 1979. 1979 से हुआ था. ठीक. But today we are seeing only the adverse effect of that. जो भी rehabilitation हुई and you can see this part. यहाँ से पूरी locality थी, आबादी थी. And that time before I think just 20 or 15 years, you could drink the water यहीं से. And today what you are seeing, it is only mess up here. So what we have experienced, as long as Dal dwellers are here, Dal people are here.
As pollution and politics continue to drive and dominate the Dal discourse, the future of more than 6,000 families hangs in the balance. Anthropologists Nishita Srisal and Mona Bhan argue that, quote, saving the Dal is a discourse that represents a new green neoliberalism in Kashmir. For some, government initiatives are viewed with skepticism, but others say that it's time to get over these differences to truly save the Dal and its precious floating gardens. What does the future hold for the floating gardens and the community of lake dwellers, particularly women who have sustained them for centuries? It's hard to make a definitive statement about the future of the Dal, but I remain optimistic. I'll leave us with a quote from Sabina that stayed with me long after I met her and long after I left Kashmir. It speaks of the possibility of remaking the lake. She dreams of a time in the future where people will not only be able to put their hands into the lake again, but also to drink from it. Why can't that be part of a possible future, she asks.
जब हमारे साइड से इतना क्लीन है, इनने भी कहा आपका मन चाहेगा कि आप पियो वो पानी. जब इन्होंने वो देखा, जब वो पॉसिबल है, तो इससे ज़्यादा क्यों नहीं पॉसिबल है?
Thank you for listening to this episode of Whetstone Audio Dispatch. We'll be back next week to explore the Kashmiri bakeries or kandors, local neighborhood establishments around which life here happens. Thank you to Whetstone founder Stephen Satterfield, executive producer Celine Glacier, sound editor Daniel Tariq, and music composer Catherine Yang. I'm grateful to Nidhi Varma, who worked with me on the script, and to Vidya Balachandar for all her amazing inputs. Thank you also to Ejaz Hussain and finally to Sana Irshad Matu for being the best Srinagar guide, translator and photographer I could ask for. You can learn more about Whetstone Media at www.whetstonemagazine.com.